Seconds before 17-year-old Trayvon Martin was killed just yards from his house by George Zimmerman, a neighborhood watch volunteer, these call logs obtained by ABC News show he was on the phone with a 16-year-old girl. ABC News was there exclusively as an attorney for Martin's family prodded her late Monday about what she heard that night as she spoke to Martin on his cell phone.
He said his man was watching him, so he put his hoodie on. The
young woman's parents asked we not use her name and that only the attorney question her. She says suddenly Martin was cornered, asking the man,
I said, what you following me for? And the man said, what you doing around here? Somebody push Trayvon because the head said this down.
She says the line then went dead. Seconds later, Zimmerman shot Martin.
A dramatic new twist in the case over the last 24 hours. The Miami Herald reporting that the lead homicide investigator on the scene that February night wanted to charge George Zimmerman with manslaughter and applied for a warrant, but the state's attorney held off until further review. Meanwhile, Zimmerman's staunchest defender has a story that many think could be unraveling.
Judging by your last answer, you're really just an acquaintance.
Well, the close was not ever my term.
Your role in this, Joe, just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it just doesn't make sense. And I'll agree with you. My role in this, I agree, just doesn't make sense. I've been trying to contact George since shortly after this happened, and I've been trying to contact him in order to offer my help because of my experience with the media. First and foremost, this was not a racial incident.
As you say, it's not a racial incident, but there is the racial epithet that's heard by many on the tape to police. You have yourself said that you have heard the derogatory remark. How can you say that this is not a racial incident when someone is describing the person that they believe and deem to be suspicious as black and then potentially call them a derogatory term on tape to the police? How is this not a racial incident?
I also said I've played it several times, and I've heard a hard C, and I've heard a hard G. And after speaking with George this morning and asking him, is that what he said? He told me he's never, ever said that, and that he himself heard the recording that was played to him by the police department, and neither of those words was on the recording that he heard. Now, and this is the first I've heard about that.
I just want to listen to what you told Chris Matthews about that, and we'll try to get your light back while we're playing that tape. So let's just listen to this.
To me, it's a matter of interpretation of whether he's saying coon or goon. There are a lot of parts of this country where people proudly call themselves coon asses, in Louisiana in particular. And I don't know too many people who younger than 40 who use that term as a racial slur. As far as the other word, goon, I've been informed by my 17-year-old daughter that among her peers is a term of endearment.
Joe, as you know, there's been an awful lot of African-American reaction to that, starting with Charles Blow. Let's hear his reaction to that now.
Well, I grew up in Louisiana, and I have never once heard an African-American refer to an African-American in that way.
I never said an African-American.
Like you said before, you're going to let me finish.
I will.
Particularly as a term, any sort of term of endearment, and particularly, why would you insinuate that George Zimmerman was using that as a term of endearment, whether it's a C or a G, after the F word, about a person whom he found suspicious, about a person whom he was following with a gun? That is absolutely patently ridiculous.
Again, that interview had nothing to do with George and Trayvon.
But it has everything to do about what you know about the man that you're trying to defend, because you weren't there at this shooting.
And neither was anyone else, and that's the problem.
About who George Zimmerman is, and you're trying to defend a man that no one else is showing up to defend. Not even his own parents have come out for an interview yet. Take a listen to this.
If you don't know where George Zimmerman is, and if you have not seen him in over a month, and you have been going out saying that George cannot stop crying, which you cannot verify because you were not there, you have been saying, nope, you have been saying that there are lacerations and his nose is broken, and only thing you know is what George may have told you because you were not there and you have not seen him for over a month.
Why is no one else speaking out for George Zimmerman, just you?
Because they're afraid. They're in hiding as much as George is, you know? He's
friends of George. I mean, you're a friend. You say you're a friend or an acquaintance of colleagues. I mean, his colleagues and his friends are in hiding. His colleagues and friends are not. People that work with him, acquaintances,
speak out because
his acquaintances are hiding.
His colleagues cannot speak out because that would risk their jobs. That interview last night may have cost me my job.
Why would that interview cost you your job? You've done, I don't know how many interviews.
Because
why would that one be the linchpin to the success of your career?
Because it has nothing to do with my employer.
What does it have to do with then?
My employer is concerned as well because they need to keep their clients.
In terms of...
And because, Thomas, this whole thing, all of this, the one common denominator, because of why George called in that first night, of why Trayvon and George met together, of why George's family and friends won't come out and speak, of why we can't talk about where we work, is fear. It's the common denominator. There is security around my workplace right now.
I thought
because there have been threats.
I thought you left work. That's something you said last night in Lawrence. You've taken time off from work.
Yes, I have taken time off.
Now you're in New York, and now you're.
I went to work Monday morning, and I've had conversations with my employers, and it was agreed that it would be best for the security of my coworkers that I take some time and I address this until I'm no longer a part of the story.
Are you worried for your own safety?
Part of the story.
Are you worried for your own safety?
Yes.
Why?
Because of the threats that are out there, because there have been veiled threats that have come through my employer towards me.
Does it make you regret stepping your foot into this foray?
No. I will clarify that I know George well enough to put my own reputation and my own life on the line because I know George would do the same for me.
Detective Serino, the lead homicide investigator on the case the night of the shooting of Trayvon Martin, told us tonight that he feels very positive about the new investigations. He is very encouraged by those investigations, and, his words, he is looking forward to the truth coming out. Joining me now is Joe Oliver, friend of George Zimmerman. Joe, thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
First of all, how long have you known George Zimmerman?
I've known George about 6 years. I've known him ever since he started dating his wife. His mother-in-law is a close friend of the family.
So you've only known him socially?
Yes, mostly socially.
You've never been in the same workplace?
You know, I'm sure that information is out there, but I know where he works.
I've come across some information that indicates you both worked at the same place at the same time. Can you confirm that?
You know, if you've come across that information, then you have come across that information. You know, I am not working right now as I'm trying to help George.
And how are you paying your expenses if you're not working? Is someone paying you to do this for George?
No, no one is paying me to do this for George. It wasn't until this weekend when I learned that he had retained an attorney that I contacted him through his attorney and spoke with him and validated for myself that I would be doing the right thing for standing up for George.
Joe, I want to get into how well you know him, and that's why I'm asking about the workplace. Did you spend time together in the workplace?
Occasionally, yeah.
Okay, and have you ever been alone with George Zimmerman?
Yes, I have.
In the workplace?
Yes, I have.
And did you have private conversations with him over the years about his experience with law enforcement?
Not his experience with law enforcement, but I've had conversations with him about why he was a criminal justice major.
And did you know him when he was arrested in 2005?
No, I did not.
Did he ever tell you about that?
No, I did not. But what I've learned from that arrest is that it was for coming to the aid of a friend who was being arrested as well.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly how that arrest was described by Agent Paul Fleischman. This is according to the Miami Herald today. Agent Paul Fleischman wrote that Zimmerman walked up to a pal under arrest and began chatting, refusing to leave. Zimmerman cursed him, Fleischman wrote, before pushing him and causing a short struggle. That is the police account of that arrest.
Well, like I said, I wasn't there, and I would think that during that time, George may have been drinking. George, I don't know, because as long as I've known him, he hasn't drank.
Do you know that George, whether George had to enroll in anger management classes as a result of that case?
No, I don't, but I would imagine that that would have been part of what he went through in order to avoid any charges sticking.
And Joe, you got to know him first in the workplace or when he became engaged to someone you knew?
I've known him since he met his now wife and started dating her.
And did that wife know that his previous fiancee had brought charges against him?
I would think so.
But you don't know that.
I don't.
Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Did her mother know that? Because you know her mother.
I don't know. You'd have to ask her.
Have you discussed that with anyone? The charges of violence brought against him by his former fiancee?
I've not had any reason to discuss the violent history he may have had.
Well, Joe,
and
here's why we're discussing.
Hang on, Lawrence. If you would allow me to answer your question completely and fully, then maybe we can go on with this discussion. Now, as far as what happened with George before I met him, for me, that's irrelevant, because whatever happened before I met him, he grew immensely from it to be a kind, gentle, giving, and caring individual, one who I trusted with my own child.
So you don't think that anyone's violent history has anything to do with evaluating their credibility when they are engaged in a violent act that becomes controversial?
I think their violent history becomes a factor when they don't alter their violent behavior. That's when I think that becomes a factor. I mean, why would we have this system where we give people an opportunity to learn from their mistakes and grow from them? And George Zimmerman learned from his mistakes and grew from them.
What mistakes did George Zimmerman tell you about that, and what did he tell? How did he tell you he grew from his mistakes?
I'm just saying from what I have seen, the person that I know, the George Zimmerman I know, was not the George Zimmerman who was arrested in 2005. It's documented, if you've got the records there, that he did go through anger management. What's the point of having someone go through anger management if they're not going to alter their behavior? If George had to go through all of that,
Joe,
it was very successful. It was very successful.
Joe, come on, don't be silly.
I'm not being silly.
Just stop it. You don't believe that anger management actually successfully manages the anger of everyone who goes through anger management. You're not that naive about this.
You know what? You're right. I'm not. And it doesn't work for everyone. And I didn't know that George had been through that. And if he had been through that, then I know it worked for at least one person.
Okay, quickly. You said that you talked to him about this for the very first time on Saturday. Did his lawyer arrange that discussion, and did his lawyer participate in that discussion?
No, his lawyer did not participate in that discussion.
Okay. And you have said that you needed to have that conversation with him on Saturday in order to go out and publicly defend him. Tell us now what you learned from George Zimmerman on Saturday that you did not know before your conversation with him. What was the turning point in your conversation with him that changed your understanding of this so that you could confidently come here and defend him about his actions in something you did not witness?
My conversation with George was between me and George, and being an African-American male and understanding what was going on with George's involvement in this and with my experience, I mean, first of all, I had to ask myself, what am I going to do for this person that I consider as a friend? I wasn't going to go off with just the information that was being fed out there, that all we knew about what had happened, which, again, if I didn't know George Zimmerman, I'd be outraged myself. There's no question about that.
Joe, these are your talking points that you've used on every show. That is a non-credible answer.
That's your opinion.
You've claimed to have a conversation with him that changed your understanding of the facts, and now you want to go out publicly and say, I will not share with anyone what George Zimmerman told me to change my opinion of the facts so that I could go out and defend him. I don't want to hear your talking points that you've used on every show you've been on.
So this is not admissible in any court.
Were you there?
No, I'm asking you because you are the one who is saying you know in your heart that George Zimmerman was in a life or death situation, and I'm saying that we don't know. I'm saying that we have to wait till the investigation is finished. And you are saying that you know that that was George Zimmerman. You said on television that you know that that was George Zimmerman's voice crying out for help. And you have only known George for 6 years, and you have only seen him in social situations. His mother told me that she is absolutely 100% sure that that is her son, and she has known that boy for 17 years. She has heard him cry many times from a child all the way up to 17. She is saying, are you saying that you know George Zimmerman's voice better than Trayvon's mother knows his voice?
I'm saying it, as you know, Lawrence has pointed out, I've had numerous conversations with George, and because now it's been revealed.
Have you ever heard George Zimmerman scream?
You know what? What is the point of you asking me questions if you're not giving me an opportunity to answer? Okay?
Answer the question.
And as far as George raising his voice, yeah, I've heard him raise his voice before.
Scream.
Not in anger.
Scream.
Not in anger.
Scream.
Would you know what, why are we having this discussion if you're not listening? If you're not listening to my answers, if you're not giving me a chance to finish my answers, why are we having this discussion?
Joe, let's see what we can do here. I've listened carefully. You've said for you the entire thing, your entire view comes down to a gut feeling. That's all it is. And okay, and I'm glad you clarified
not just a gut feeling.
Joe,
not
Joe,
just look. I've asked questions. I've asked questions. Can I answer that?
You know what,
Can I ask you why it's a gut feeling and why I feel good about it? Because it's an instinctual thing, and it's also because I've had what I have been told validated. What you have heard so far that has been leaked has been is validating what I've been told. There's other information that is yet to come out that we're waiting for the grand jury to pass down, okay? And when that comes down, then it's a question of whether or not anybody else believes what the investigation turns out. You know, we welcome the state's attorney looking into this. We welcome the grand jury. We welcome the Justice Department. We welcome all of this because, first of all, this was not a racial incident. And we welcome all of this because we know that if we weren't sitting here talking about George shooting Trayvon, we'd be talking about Trayvon shooting George.
Joe, we're going to get to that in a minute, the detail of that in a minute. I just want to explain to the audience that we've lost a little bit of the light in your studio, and so the image looks a little different here. But, Joe, this is the problem. The problem is that you've identified on this show that the only reason you believe George Zimmerman's account of what happened is your own personal gut feeling. That is not good enough for America, Joe, and you have to know that. That is not good enough for a jury, Joe, and you have to know that. You have to know, Joe, that you would not be a witness in this case.
Oh, I don't want to be a witness in this case. Well, you may be, Joe, you may be, because you had an unprotected conversation with him on Saturday that is relevant to the case, and so you should be subpoenaed and questioned under oath about exactly what he talked to you about. And if you're not, that's an incompetent investigation going on in Florida. Has anyone reached out to you from law enforcement since you publicly said you had a conversation with Zimmerman on Saturday and asked to interview you and put you under oath about that conversation? No, no one has.
Joe, you're a mystery man to me because you're doing this on such a slim basis of a gut feeling. You've given up your job. I don't understand how you give up your job and your income to go out here and do this public relations job for George Zimmerman. I don't understand how you can afford to do this. It's strange behavior, Joe. It doesn't add up to me. And then yesterday on Hardball, you were saying these wildly nutty things about that racial slur, just anything you could say to defend this guy on the basis of nothing but a gut feeling. Your role in this, Joe, just doesn't make sense to me. You don't even have a consistent story. You've told us you don't know what his mistakes were. Then you tell us he grew from them. Then you tell us you're not sure if he did anger management. Then you're pretty sure he did do anger management. You know about the arrest. You don't know if his current wife knew about his previous fiance's violent complaints against him and the injunction against him that the previous fiance got. There's so much you don't know, Joe, and you want America. You go on national television like this, CNN, all these other shows, and you say to America, believe me, I can vouch for the man who shot and killed Trayvon Martin because I, Joe Oliver, have a completely inexplicable and unjustifiable gut feeling. Joe, it is not good enough for America. I want to thank you very much for coming in tonight. You can go off and do other television interviews, and they're all going to be easier than this one, and you knew that before this one started. I appreciate you coming in and doing this tonight. It was more than the lawyer representing George Zimmerman was willing to do last night. He ran out of that chair that you're sitting in tonight, and I thank you very much for staying with us and doing this extra time with us tonight. Joe Oliver, I think you've clarified a lot about what your position on this comes from. Joe, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Joining us now from our newsroom in Orlando is Craig Sauner, the legal advisor for George Zimmerman. Hi there, Craig.
Good morning, or good afternoon, I
Thanks
guess.
for joining us. I'm sure it's been some long days for you. We see these rallies popping up everywhere in cities all over the country. We're hearing a lot of heated rhetoric here. We haven't heard much about George Zimmerman's side of the story, except in the last couple of days, an occasional leak here or there. Has George told you exactly what happened that night?
I've revealed this because, I don't know how the case is going to go, how the indictment's going to go, or the grand jury. But we will. I'm, anticipating, getting it ready for trial as much as I can, because I don't have all the information on the case either.
There's been a lot of criticism of the police department as to not releasing any details of the shooting for several weeks as to why they felt this was justified, and a lot of people think maybe that allowed a lot of this emotion to get out of control. Do you think the police department should have released some of this information sooner?
Oh, the police department, they followed procedure. They were investigating whatever happened that day, and they didn't, based on whatever information they've got, they have a right to investigate the situation for as long as they want. They don't have to go right away to making an arrest.
What do you expect the results of this investigation will reveal here?
I believe that it's going to show that George Zimmerman acted in self-defense.
Let's talk a little bit about, I understand the attorney-client privilege, so there's a lot of information you can't tell us about his specific case, but can you tell us maybe when's the last time you spoke with him, with George?
Spoke with him this morning.
Okay. Have you at all considered maybe letting him speak at any point in this process?
No, I won't allow him to speak on the record until possibly after then it'll be up to him after the case is over.
Okay. Is he in hiding right now?
Yes.
He is. And then we have heard some talk about some of the threats that have been on him. Is he in fear for his life?
Yes. I mean, when I say he's in hiding, I mean, the law enforcement knows where he is.
Sure.
I can contact him by phone. I don't know physically exactly where he is. I know approximately, but law enforcement does have, he's not hiding from law enforcement. He's hiding from any would-be attackers.
And I know you had said that he suffered some injuries that night. He banged his head on the ground. I know. How bad were his injuries?
It's my understanding that his nose was broken and had a cut on the back of his neck sufficient to probably he should have had some stitches in it, but I don't think they did put them in. I'm not real clear on just that injury, but it was, I think, it's bad enough to need stitches.
And what would you say to, if you had a chance, to Reverend Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, who say, despite what they've heard about Zimmerman's side of the story, he should still be arrested?
Well, that'll be a question for the grand jury.
Craig Sauner is the legal advisor to George Zimmerman. Craig, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Ron Allen is in Sanford, Florida. He's got the details. Ron, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, Matt. Yes, the videotape shows Zimmerman in police custody in the hours after he shot and killed Trayvon Martin. Martin's family says this is a crucial new piece of evidence because Zimmerman's side has maintained that he was in a life and death struggle with Trayvon Martin. Martin's family says they see no evidence of that on the videotape. This Sanford police video obtained by ABC News shows officers bringing George Zimmerman in for questioning shortly after the Neighborhood Watch volunteer admitted he shot and killed Trayvon Martin. Zimmerman's attorney has said Zimmerman's nose was broken, his head smashed against the sidewalk by the unarmed teenager. The Martin family's attorney says the video does not show any evidence of blood or injuries to Zimmerman.
All the other evidence clearly contradicts everything George Zimmerman has said. America has now listened to those 911 tape with their ears, and now they see this video tonight with their eyes, and it is clear that what was in that police report was a fabrication.
The official police report says at the scene, Zimmerman's back appeared to be wet and was covered in grass, as if he had been laying on his back on the ground. It says Zimmerman was also bleeding from the nose and the back of his head, and he was given first aid in the back seat of a police car. In an interview on local Fox television Wednesday night, Zimmerman's father said the teen verbally threatened his son, who acted in self-defense.
Trayvon Martin said something to the effect of, "You're going to die now, or you're going to die tonight."
The police video was released amid published reports that early on police did request a warrant to arrest Zimmerman from the state attorney. The report described the incident as homicide, negligent, manslaughter, unnecessary killing to prevent unlawful act. Police have said the prosecutor wanted more evidence before Zimmerman could be arrested because of Florida's Stand Your Ground law. In a radio interview, the new prosecutor, Angela Corey, recently appointed by the governor, said she has a lot of experience with that law.
We fight these stand your ground motions really often. We have won some really tough trials where those defenses were asserted.
Corey has also said she may make the decision herself about whether to press charges against Zimmerman rather than giving the evidence to a grand jury. Martin's family, which has released new pictures of the teen at a birthday party for his mother 9 days before he died, has expressed concern about a decision being made behind closed doors.
Private proceedings have never, ever bode well for people from Trayvon's community.
Meanwhile, the case continues to reverberate.
Just because someone wears a hoodie.
On Capitol Hill, Illinois Democrat Bobby Rush was reprimanded Wednesday for wearing a hoodie on the House floor in support of Trayvon Martin. Police here have not commented on that new tape, but as recently as yesterday, they released another statement maintaining that Zimmerman acted in self-defense and that there are witnesses and evidence to back up that claim.
More breaking news tonight, the Trayvon Martin case. The special prosecutor in charge of deciding whether George Zimmerman will face charges says she may make a decision about charges before a grand jury investigation begins. Angela Corey told the LA Times her team is working at a rapid pace on the investigation, but urged the public to show patience. Corey was appointed to the case last week by Florida Governor Rick Scott. In her interview with the LA Times, Corey said, "The only commitment I made to our governor is that I will determine the facts and give Trayvon Martin's family the answers they deserve. But we want to give them complete answers. It will also be up to Corey to determine whether race played a role in the killing of Trayvon Martin."
Hey everyone. Okay, here we go with the news. The Florida State Attorney's Office has issued a subpoena for Trayvon's girlfriend to appear in front of the grand jury on April 10th. She has hired a lawyer to advise her and make sure that her rights are being protected. Her attorney has told prosecutors that she is ready to appear and is looking forward to tell the grand jury what happened on February 26th. And in other news regarding the Trayvon Martin case, this one pertaining to George Zimmerman, regarding the domestic violence petition that was filed against him in 2005. There's an article posted on the Orlando Sentinel website. A woman reported Zimmerman had arrived at her home August 8th and asked to talk. Later, when she asked him to leave, She said he insisted on staying and demanded documents she had. The woman said she offered to drop the papers off the following day, but Zimmerman became upset, took her cell phone, and shoved her. A fight ensued, and her dog bit Zimmerman's cheek. Zimmerman filed his own petition the day after his ex-fiancee's, in which he claimed that she had been the aggressor in the fight. Both Zimmerman and his ex-fiancee reported that the fight wasn't the first incident of violence between them. The ex-fiancee reported that Zimmerman had open-handed smacked her in the mouth and berated her during an argument in January 2003. In November 2002, the woman said Zimmerman became angry when she came home later than her usual time one night. He began groping her and said he could because I was his woman. Protective injunctions were later ordered in response to both petitions.